Good morning, everyone. Welcome to XPX educational meeting. I'm Christine Mills. I'm very excited to introduce to you Eric Howes. He is a champion of the frustrated entrepreneur. In his 30-year journey through the entrepreneurial world, he's almost seen it all. After creating and operating 8 different businesses and helping hundreds of clients, Eric now helps other business leaders get what they want out of their business via speaking, coaching, and sharing his experiences. Eric currently is an implementer of EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. He works with the leadership teams of entrepreneurial companies to create a powerful framework that helps them scale and get everything they want out of their businesses. Prior to that, Eric founded and operated Square Two Marketing, a digital marketing agency based in Philadelphia. He implemented EOS at Square Two, and the business took off. So much so that Eric was able to exit in 2023 and start to help other folks enjoy the same experience he had. At Square Two, Eric was a leading sales and marketing strategist focused on pioneering a new marketing methodology. Eric, along with his business partner, Mike Lieberman, coined the concept reality marketing to describe how businesses can utilize cost-effective inbound marketing tactics to achieve a dramatic revenue growth. They are leading the revolution and how entrepreneurs change the way they think about marketing their companies. Welcome, Eric. We're looking forward to what you have to say today about scaling our businesses.
That's great. Thank you, Christine. I really appreciate that. Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for having me. I'm incredibly grateful because you could do a lot of other stuff this morning besides hanging out with me. So I want to make our time as productive as possible. Christine, with your nice introduction, one of the key things about implementing EOS and leaning into the 6 key components is that it drives a lot of value for your business. And that's the key thing I would like to touch upon today, because when we implemented it at our 43 person agency, we almost tripled the value from an EBITDA perspective, which enabled my exit. So I've lived in that seat of having a business and really driving value. And I'd like to share some of that information of what we did with the crowd today. So here we go. So it's called Throwing Gas on the Fire, How to Rapidly Scale Your Business Leveraging the 6 Key Components. Whoop. That would be the last slide. There we go. Sorry, folks. All righty. So on our agenda today, it's pretty straightforward. I'd like to get real with you and talk about some of the things that EOS impacts. We'll keep it simple. I'll show you some of the methodology, and then, of course, I'll show you how to get results with this as well. So when you talk about getting real, it's driving value for the business. Whether you decide to keep it or sell it, you want to have as much value in your business as possible. Lots of times I've seen business owners implement EOS and then decide that they're having such a fun ride that maybe an exit could be postponed for a while they're enjoying the fruits of their labor. The frustration that a lot of business owners have is that they don't have their business in control. The business is running them. They are not running the business. They are missing profit or having such little profit that doing all of those things that they do to generate the sales and profit at the end of the day just aren't worth it. Might as well just put their money in the bank. Also, people are a big challenge, and that's one of the biggest components of EOS is getting the right people in the right seats, which we'll talk about in just a second. But once you have an army of people that are following you into battle, gosh, things get a lot easier and results happen right away. And then, of course, there's hitting the ceiling. What worked at a $2 million company does not work at a $4 million company, which doesn't work at an $8 million company. And breaking through that ceiling in a relatively efficient and stress-free way is one of the things that EOS presents as well. And finally, the last and probably the biggest one is that nothing's working, right? They started a business. They had this beautiful vision of where they wanted to take that business, and they can't seem to get the traction to get there. And that's a big challenge. So we're going to solve all these problems today. So in the sense of keeping it simple, the EOS model, or the 6 key components that create the EOS model, all start with your business. Your business is in the middle of everything. And what we want to do is to look at the 6 key components. The first one is vision. Do you have a clear vision where you're leading the team or leading the company? And is everybody on board with that and understands where we're going? Do you have not only the right people, but are the right people in the right seats? Do you have the data, a good, healthy scorecard, and everybody watching over the measurables in your company to make sure that all the metrics are going up and to the right? When you have these three things in place, then what happens is your business becomes incredibly transparent. And now we have a little bit of an open and honest conversation around the issues that are starting to arise and how do we then capture them and knock them down forever. Process is the fifth key component. Lots of businesses don't have processes that they follow all the time, which enables them to be efficient and scale. Hey, Charlie, welcome to the team. This is how we do it. Step one, step two, step three. Training becomes easy. The client experience becomes better because everything is more consistent and efficient. And at the end of the day, that drops a lot more profitability to the bottom line. And then finally, the sixth key component is what we call traction, having a great meeting pulse so that your team is getting together on a regular basis to solve those problems and attacking quarterly rocks or 13-week initiatives that are so important they keep the business moving forward every single quarter. When you have these six components humming, then you have a very successful business. But vision without traction is hallucination. So how do we bring this down to the ground and use it on a daily basis so that everybody in the organization is pulling to that vision? What's interesting about the model is that when you have a pretty healthy company, they're really just operating at about 80% proficiency. So why 80%? Because at 100%, that would be utopian and virtually impossible to attain. But if you can get 80% proficient on these six key components, I guarantee your business will explode. What's interesting is that most companies are really hovering around a 20% efficiency, despite the fact that they might be making a few dollars here and there. So the goal here is to let you be 80% strong in all six of these areas, and then you can exit, or you can choose to keep it yourself. So let's go back into a second go around on some of these tools here. And I'm going to introduce you to some of the key things that you can do in each one of these six key components in order to have a really healthy company and then be able to create that value for exit. The first thing is you got to have a strategy. And I do not mean a 600-page strategic plan that's in a 3-ring binder that sits on the shelf and it's gathering dust. I literally mean answering 8 easy questions to make sure that you and your team are completely aligned on where you want to go. Those 8 questions are what we call the Vision Traction Organizer. The first 5 are vision, right? Where are we going? And the last 3 are traction. How are we going to get there? If you email me, and I'll give you my contact information in just a second, I'll send you this handy little form that you can use with your team to start to organize your vision. Let's go through some of the components now. In the first one, you got to have your core values. Core values is a business term that's bandied around constantly, but most people spend an hour creating some core values, print a poster, put it up in the conference room, and call it a day. Core values are so crucial, which is why they're the first question we need to answer. What's the framework by which you want to make decisions and run your company? How do you want to recruit and retain the right people based on the core values that your team has set and exhibit every day? You have to discover those core values, define them, and live and breathe them on a daily basis, not just on a poster in the conference room. So the first thing we have to do is uncover your core values. Next, we have our core focus. Core focus is your purpose, cause, and passion. Why do you do what you do? What makes all of your team members jump up out of bed every morning and say, I can't wait to get to work to execute on this vision? And then your niche is a little bit more pedestrian. That's the what you do. But it's important to define what you do so that you don't suffer from shiny object syndrome, which means you're easily distracted by new things that your company could get involved in, and you're staying the course on making sure you could do what your company does better than anybody else in the world. For more information on this, you might want to check out Good to Great and the hedgehog concept that Jim Collins wrote about. The third thing you have to answer is what's your 10-year target? Could be a 20-year target or a 30-year target. But where are we going? Where is that big, hairy, audacious goal, or BHAG that this is sometimes called, that is our Northern Star that we're using to guide ourselves on our decisions today so that all decisions and activities we do today pull to that vision? 2 quick examples are Subway sandwiches wants every American to spend 50 cents a year in their stores, and Microsoft wanted to put a personal computer on everyone's desk back in the day. Those are big targets that when you boil them down, let everybody know exactly where you're going. You have to understand also that it's your number one goal, and nothing else gets in the way of achieving this 10-year target. Now you have a conversation around your marketing strategy. Who do you want to talk to? Why they should do business with you? What's your process for showing them that you're the best option in town? And what's your guarantee to make sure that everything comes out exactly as anticipated? The marketing strategy makes sure that we have the focus on what we're doing, on who we're talking to, and why they should do business with us. which sets us up for the 3-year picture. Now we're bringing that big, hairy, audacious goal or 10-year target down to a 3-year picture. Now it becomes a little bit more easy to wrap our heads around because 3 years out is not so far. We talk about what date this is going to happen, what the revenue will be, what the profit will be, what the big measurable, and then we give a whole bunch of components so that we can paint a picture of what it looks like. This is fabulous for helping your team understand where you're going, get alignment with them. And when you're recruiting new team members, if you paint this picture and they're excited about that, that's probably a good match for your company and someone who would want to join on your mission. Those wrap up the vision part. So now that you know where you're going, how are we going to execute on that? The first thing we do is we take that 3-year picture and we break it down into a 1-year plan. Once again, same thing that you see here. What's the future date, the revenue, profit, and the measurables? But now, instead of just painting a picture of some of the things that might happen in 3 years, we're actually setting the goal of what we want to accomplish this year, which will get us to our 3-year picture, which will get us to our 10-year target. Next thing we have to do is set rocks. Rocks are 13-week initiatives that everybody in the company participates in that are so urgent and important this quarter that that's what we're going to use to move the company forward. These are not to-dos, they are rocks, meaning that you have a relatively large project that takes about 13 weeks or less to accomplish, once again with the definition that it's going to move the company forward. And then finally, the last thing is we have to have a healthy running issues list to get all of our challenges and obstacles out on the table and have a great way to solve those. And I'll show you how we do that in just a little bit. At the end of the day, your company today looks like the image on the left. Everybody's working hard, but they're not exactly aligned in the same direction. But when you answer the 8 key questions, all of a sudden, everybody's going in the same direction, and you're harnessing that human energy to get what you want out of your business, which is either profit or that exit. Now, having the 8 questions is great, but the second part of vision is making sure that it's shared by all. And it's important as leaders of your company to make sure that everybody understands exactly where we're going so that they can participate. There are some crazy statistics that 1 out of every 5 employees doesn't even know where the company's going, and more importantly, what their role is in helping that company get there. When you have those 8 questions answered and they're shared by all, then you're 100% strong in the vision component of your business. 81% of all business owners classify people as their most challenging issue. So let's talk about that component next. In the people component, we have 2 specific things we want to accomplish. The first one is we want to get the right people. How we get the right people is by using those core values to make sure that they're aligned with how we want to run our business. What you see here is a nifty little tool called the People Analyzer. You basically put your core values on the top. And then once those core values are in place, you can start to rate all your team members or prospective team members on how they do against those core values. You have pluses and minuses or plus minuses. A plus means that they're doing it every single day. A minus means they rarely exhibit that core value. And a plus minus means about half of the time they're actually executing on that. When you start to rate them using the core values, now you can see, are Maria, John, and George good fits for where we want to behave as a company? And that's how we know we have the right people. Once we have all this rating done, you can drop that down to what you see at the bottom here called the bar. And you know that if anybody's less than 3 pluses and 2 plus minuses, they're just not going to work at your company because they're not a good fit with your core values. This exercise alone will help you get better people on your team, and those better people will help you achieve your vision. But just having the right people is not enough. We also have to get them in the right seats. And what I mean by right seats is the positions they hold at your company to make sure that you have someone who's adhering to your core values, but they also get it, want it, and have the capacity to do that. The vast majority of all people issues come from not having the right people in the right seats. You could have the right people in the wrong seats. You could have the wrong people in the right seats. But when you can get those right people in the right seats, man, everything falls together. So in order to organize that, you got to put a little structure to your business. And that's where this tool called the accountability chart comes in so well. Every single company basically has these 5 functions. They have a visionary to show us where we're going, an integrator to do the day-to-day on how we're going to get to that vision. And then typically we have 3 major areas of a business: sales and marketing, operations, and finance. When those 3 things are working together and the integrator is integrating those and the visionary is leading the way, that's when you have the right people all aligned going in the right direction. Each one of those seats has 5 roles or so. And those are the things that those people should focus on 80% of the time to find success in their seat. So when you have that person in marketing named John Forstein, and they have to lead, manage, and hold accountable their team, they have to generate leads, create weekly content, report on the marketing metrics, and be their HubSpot lead contact, as an example. Now we know that John is focused on making sure that the marketing seat is successful at every turn. Marketing seed also has to be GW seed. John Forstein has to get it. He has to understand what it takes to do this job. He has to want it, jump out of bed every day saying, this is exactly what I want to be doing. And then C has the capacity to do it. That's the skill set necessary to perform at a high level on this job. So now when you put it all together, John Forstein, we're going to check him out. We have core values, and he's doing that. But when we add gets it once and then has the capacity, and he's yes, yes, yes in every seat, now all of a sudden we have the right people in the right seat. And that's really exciting, because imagine if you had a team of 100 people following you into battle. Obviously, you could take over the world. Use this system every time you hire or review an existing team member, and I guarantee you that you'll have much success by holding true to the bar. The third component that we want to talk about now is getting the right people, your data. The first thing is that we have to talk the language of the business, which is extracting the data to make sure that we have all the right numbers. I love this quote by Jim Barksdale. Well, if we don't have the data, we only have our opinions. Let's go with mine. That's not the way we want to do it. We want to have hard data. And the key to having hard data is having an effective scorecard, specifically the MyTie numbers. Picture you're on an island with no internet, and the person who's bringing you your cocktail brings you one sheet of paper with 5 numbers on it. And you know, as leader of your company, if those 5 numbers are in line, your company is doing well. That's the concept of having a really effective scorecard. Having measurables, setting goals against those measurables, assigning accountability and responsibility for that, and then having a 13-week trend report showing how every one of these numbers is working. This is gold when it comes to understanding how and why your business is having challenges in some area and exploding in other areas. So having a great scorecard is essential for scaling your business and driving a lot of value. But also having each person having a measurable is important, because if we have everybody in the company watching out for 1 or 2 numbers, then we know that there's not going to be more than a couple weeks that goes by before we can nip a problem in the bud. If you want an example, here are some interesting scorecard measurables that lots of people use on their scorecard that you might find interesting. There we go. So everybody in the company having a measurable is key as well, because if we have the scorecard and everybody's watching out for it, that's when you become 100% strong in the data component of your business. Moving on to the issues, this is one of the biggest challenges that companies have. They don't like to talk openly and honestly about their issues, so problems never get solved. In EOS, this component comprises of having a very active, open and honest issues list, meaning over the course of the week, your team is not afraid to stick on the issues list, something that's getting in the way of their success. By having an issues list, now we know what we want to talk about. We prioritize that issues list, and we use a technique called IDS. Identify the issue, discuss it, and solve it. So if this is a sample issues list, the first thing we want to do is collect these during the week and as new ones arise, so that we have 7 or 8 things we want to talk about each week. The next thing we do is we start to prioritize. Which one are we going to talk about first? Well, Andy S. in the right seat is the first problem we want to talk about. Then we want to talk about our website being off track and the Anodyne merger, which is coming up in a few months. Identifying these 3, we jump into action and we start to IDS. The IDS means that we're going to identify the issue, because we want to make sure we're talking about the right issue. We don't want to talk about something that's not that critical. Next thing we want to do after we've identified the actual issue that is the problem is we want to discuss the heck out of it. Take as much time as you need to discuss options and what the challenges are. This is where a lot of companies stop. But what you have to do is go on to the third step, which is then solve the problem. And by that, I simply mean that we're coming up with action items to move this problem forward or eliminate it completely. The problem, once again, is that when you have this issues list, a lot of people get stuck in the discussion area and they don't get to the solve. And that's where we want to make sure that we always have action items that come from an IDS session to make sure that over the course of the week, we're doing the things to get rid of that. That is what we call a successful issues list and the IDS that comes with it. When you have an active issues list that people find they're open and honest to add things to, and you have an effective way to knock them down, that's when you're 100% strong in the issues component of your business. From a process component, this is the second largest problem that I see in companies that just they don't have uniform processes. Processes have to be documented. So you get a handful of core processes in every single company. You have your people processes, your marketing processes, how you sell things, how you deliver your goods or services, how you take care of your customers. These are pretty typical. When you have identified these processes, the next thing you want to do is you want to document them. And I'm not talking about a 700-page operations manual. I'm talking about 20% of the steps that produce 80% of the effectiveness. So once we have these down, we start to capture them. And we make it very simple. Here's your people process. We got a couple of steps, our sales process. And when we put them all together, a group of processes becomes your company's way, your way of doing business. This drives huge value to a buyer because they see that you're organized and you know exactly what it takes to operate your business. If I can stress this enough, capturing these processes, putting them all together, and having a standard operating procedure for your company will drive immense value. We had this at Square 2, and the multiple that we received in our exit was far exceeding companies that were in our space simply because we leaned into this specific area. By systematizing the predictable, you can humanize the exceptional. Great quote, because we don't want to think about all reinventing the wheel every single week. We want our people to act very freely. Now, the next thing you got to do when you have them all documented is you got to make sure they're followed by all. And that's when having a followed by all checklist comes into play. How do we train people? How do we measure their success? How do we lead, manage, and hold accountable the folks that are in our department? And then how do we update processes as things change over the course of time? When you have these four things in place, now they're followed by all. And when you have all your processes documented and followed by all, that's when you're 100% strong in the process component of your business. And the last one, and perhaps the most important of all of the 6 key components, is the traction part. If you remember that quote earlier, having a great vision of where you're going without bringing it down to ground level to execute on that is just hallucination. So what we have here is 2 components in traction. The first one is this concept of the quarterly rocks. And you remember the old story about the glass jars and the rocks and the pebbles and the sand and the water. If you put the water and the sand and the pebbles in first, you don't have room for the big rocks. And that's why you got to start with the biggest initiatives to make sure that they're done every single quarter in your company. Your goal is to be able to predict. If everybody in the company says they're going to accomplish a certain task over the next 90 days, now you can start to predict what's going to happen next quarter and the quarter after that, and your company starts being incredibly proactive as opposed to reactive. And that is the benefit of having a strong ROCS program. A ROC, as you see in the definition here, is a specific, measurable priority that'll move your organizational forward. ROCs are typically identified and set each quarter, and then they're assigned to specific individuals in the organization. Now everybody is clear on what they have to do this quarter in order to move the company forward. So when you have these ROCs, that's great, but how do you check up on them? And that's where Meeting Pulse comes in. If you could get anything out of this presentation, it's setting up what's called a level 10 or L10 meeting with your team each week. That's because when you're in this quarterly ROC scenario, that's 90 days, right? So you're living in this 90-day world of every quarter. You're coming up for air, resetting your ROCs, diving back down into the business and working on them. But to make sure that those things are getting done and you're pulsing a lot faster, you want to have what's called a level 10 meeting. It's the same day, the same time. You start on time, you end on time, and you have the same exact agenda every week. This is an incredibly powerful meeting that will actually collapse other meetings into this meeting to drive efficiency in your company and or your department. So let me take you through the L10 meeting. It's a 90-minute meeting, exactly 90 minutes every single week. You start with 5 minutes of updating your teammates on good news. What happened personally this week and what happened in the business this week that was moving everything forward. The reason we start the meeting with good news is because it enables us to segue from working in the business to working on the business. Our minds are clear. We learn a little something about our teammates each week, and now we're in the right frame of mind to move forward. The next thing we do is we look at the scorecard. We don't talk about the scorecard. We just simply say, is everything on track or off track? And if one of those metrics is off track, we drop it down to IDS, that issue solving process I showed you earlier. These 3 areas are reporting only, no conversation. Just want to know if they're on track or they're off track. If we trust our teammates and they say it's on track, we don't need to talk about it. But if it's off track, yeah, then we want to drop it down and have some conversation to help each other break through obstacles or clear barriers in order to get success. We then move on for 5 minutes of talking about our rocks. Are your rocks on track or are your rocks off track? If they're off track, let's talk about them. What can we do to help you? And then we spend some time on customer and employee headlines, meaning that if there's anything that's out in the field that you want to bring to the team, oh no, I just heard from our supplier that our plant burned down. That would be something you might want to bring to the team so that they can start to work on that issue. Or it could be internal. Mary has decided to take 3 months of maternity leave. What are we going to do to backfill her position? That's another way that we could get a headline of what's going on in the business and then start to solve that problem on the team. The last 5-minute segment is just checking the to-do list, things we promised we would do last week that have to be done by this week. And if something didn't get done or it's a challenge, once again, we can drop it down into the issues list. Now we IDS. And if you notice here, 60 full minutes of our 90 minutes are meant to be put aside for talking about the issues, solving them by creating action items, and then moving on. The issues list is by far the most powerful 60 minutes of your week because these problems are getting in the way of your success. And if we could clear those out of the way, everything runs smoothly, profit falls to the bottom line, and your valuation goes up. We end the meeting by a quick 5 minutes of concluding, checking our to-do list to make sure we're cool with what's going to happen with next week. We're going to rate the meeting 1 through 10, 10 being the most productive meeting ever, 1 being a complete waste of time. And we rate our meeting to quantify how productive we are each week so that we can continuously make improvements. We conclude the meeting, everybody gets a list of what they promised to do, and now we're back into the business. So once again, if you can implement a level 10 or L10 meeting at your company, I guarantee you that it'll be a huge impact for moving your company forward. When your company has everybody executing each quarter on their rocks, and you have a weekly meeting pulse and a quarterly meeting pulse, that's when you'll be 100% strong in the traction component of your business. So, once again, it all starts with your business and these 6 key components that surround it. There are no other issues in your business that can't be solved with any of these 6 key components. So if you want to see how you're doing in these 6 key components, take out your cell phone for a second and snap a picture of this QR code. This QR code will jump you to a little survey where you could take a 6 or 7 minute quiz and rate yourself and see where you hold up in all 6 components of your business. It's completely free. There's no strings attached. It's just a nice tool to help you see where you are on the journey of driving value for your business. So please, please, please take the organizational checkup when you get a few minutes and then share the results with your leadership team. And I'm sure that will start a lively conversation. So on the final thoughts, you have to kind of think about what you want to do to drive value for your business. And the key thing is to choose a system. Could be EOS, like I just showed you today, could be something else, but choose a system to run your entire business. That was one of the largest revelations that I had because at my marketing firm, we had ways to hire people and pay bills and deliver websites, but we didn't have a framework to run the entire business. Once we implemented that framework, everything fell into place. So please, please, please choose and use one system. The whole goal here is to get what you want out of your business. I can tell you as a former entrepreneur that when I got everything working from within EOS, my life became great. I enjoyed going to meetings. I enjoyed my teammates. The profit came every single week like clockwork. It was an amazing ride. So I want you to get what you want out of your business, whether that's staying as the owner or exiting, that's completely up to you. Here's a quick testimonial from someone who implemented EOS in Minnesota. They never felt so alive and control. They own their vision and how to get there. So once again, using a system, whether it's EOS or not, would be very, very important for understanding where you could take your business. So here's some free resources for if you want to continue a little bit more learning. I know this is a relatively brief introduction to the 6 key components, but EOSworldwide.com has a gazillion tools that you could use, all free of charge to do this yourself. There's a library of all sorts of resources, including 6 very, very important books that you might want to read. Each one of them has something to do with one of the components. There's videos and tools you can download and share with your team. For $500 a month, you can join Basecamp, which is the EOS Self-Implementation Center, and then you would have access to even more things that you can do to implement the 6 key components. Of course, there's implementers like me out there that can guide you through that process as well. So thank you so much for the time. I'm just at my 32 minutes here. So I got a couple of offers for you. Number one, if you want to download the slides and share them with your team, because I just showed you all those components, all you have to do is hit up this little QR code and it'll jump you to a quick page where you can give me your name and email address and I can send them out to you. For anybody who's live on this call, and we can see all the people that are live here, if you email me, I will send you a free copy of the book, Traction. Hopefully that'll give you some in-depth and granular details about what I talked about today so that you can start to move your company forward and drive value. And of course, if you want to talk to me specifically or any of the members of my team about what EOS might look like for you, once again, in that link, we can schedule a free, no strings attached 90-minute meeting to go through more in depth of what I showed you today. So I've left some time for questions, Christine. If anybody in the audience has some, that's great. I'd be more than happy to answer them at this time.
Thanks, Eric. That was very enlightening. I have a question. I know right now that, a lot of businesses are having a hard time getting people to fill seats. And you said that it's important to have the right people in the right seats. How do you manage that process when it's very difficult to find people just to come work for you?
Yeah, Christine, it's really a great question. And I agree with you. Finding the right people and getting them in the right seats is typically the largest constraint to growth in any company. So there's a couple things you want to consider. The first thing is you got to know who the right people are, because just finding any old person on the street to sit in a cubicle or, work in your business is not the goal. The goal is to get the right people. So you got to do the core values exercise. So at least you have an understanding of who are the right people that you want to attract. And even more importantly, which are the people you want to repel. Based upon that, the second step is really thinking about what are the 5 roles that that person is going to perform at your company. Could be 6, could be 4, but typically 5 roles takes up a 40-hour work week if you're doing them brilliantly. So now if you have the core values, which is attracting and repelling the right and wrong people, and you have the 5 roles clearly outlined, you know exactly who you want to attract and what you want them to do. The key now is to start promoting ahead of time, building a bench of people that are already attracted to your company, had some initial interviews, and are kind of pre-qualified. So when you do need to pull the trigger on hiring a new employee, now we have a pool of people that are ready to go. Too often we're reactive, meaning that we're like, oh, Mary just took another job at another company. We now have an open seat. We're now frantically trying to fill that seat. As opposed to being proactive, we know our core values. We know the roles of every single seat in our organization. We have 1 or 2 people on the bench for each one of those that are helping us feel more comfortable. And now when Mary gives her resignation, we engage with those 2 people that are pre-qualified and we start to talk to them about getting started. Moving the franticness to the front end of that process usually helps you find the right people and get them into the right seat. So that's the way I always approach it with my clients. And I would say that, 80% of them have a 80% bench of people that they know are critical positions. Sometimes it's hard to find like a unique position, but for the most part, if you have a good, strong bench, this takes that problem out of the equation.
Awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure. Any other questions from the chat feature, Christine? I can't see it.
No, not right now.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody. Really appreciate it. Once again, I'm grateful because I know that you could be doing other stuff. I hope I got you thinking differently about how you could drive value in your business, and thanks for the time.